So what I'd like to do is start with hearing who you are and why you're here. Why you thought it would be a good idea to hang out, and sort of what you do in your church, so that I can make sure that I customize our time together as best that I can. We will have plenty of times for question and discussion. I don't get lost very easily, so feel free to raise your hand if you want to ask me a question or just, talk. And if we're going to come back to it, I'll say, can we put that in the parking lot? And at the end, if I haven't gotten back to it, you remind me, okay? All right. So let's start by just going around. Tell me your name, your church, why you're here today. Not what you're doing here, but why you're here today. Can we start with you? So here's the first lesson. Why in the world would she spend 29 minutes on introductions? Seek first to understand. Context counts. And relationships are important. The relationships are paramount to reaching new generations. See, we get in a room and we rush to get our business done, right? Instead of seeking first to understand. How's your day going? You all right? Anything I can do to help you? Anything I need to know? Fuss and fight in this meeting because I don't know you had a really bad day at work. I don't know nobody's been listening to you. I don't know that you're hangry. You know what I mean when I say hangry? You're hungry and angry. You're angry because you're hungry. I don't know that your boss fussed at you today. I don't know that your children didn't sleep last night. I don't know what I don't know. Because we just jump in without the context or the relationship. If you want to be a meaningful ministry with new generations, you must engage in the relational groundwork. You must take the time to build the rapport so that you can figure out what the context is in which you're working. We are really good at programming. I mean, really good at programming. But we're programming for us. Not for the people that we say we want in our congregations. So for me, if you don't hear anything else in this next hour, hear that it's the relationship and it's the context that matters. And if you're not willing to spend the time doing the relational work and the contextual work, just give it up. It's not going to work. You can't squeeze millennial generations, X, Y, or Z into your mold. It doesn't work. You didn't raise us like that. Yeah, you created this problem. Okay? I'm 33 years old. Everybody wants to know, how old are you? So I just tell you. I'm 33 years old. I'm what you call a cusper, right? I'm both Generation X and a millennial, right? And some days I act like an Xer and some days I act like a millennial. It just depends on what kind of mood I wake up in. I'm just telling you, okay? And that's how we are. You made us like that. When I went to kindergarten in the state of Georgia, it was the very first year that the state of Georgia decided that we would not read See Spot Run to learn to read, but that we would learn to read on Apple computers through a computer program called Reader Rabbit. Anybody know about Reader Rabbit? Y'all remember Reader Rabbit? Reader Rabbit was awesome. A computer taught me to read. But you want me to come sit in your sanctuary? Can I tell you the truth? Can I tell you? You want me to come sit in your sanctuary? Put your phone away. Why does she always have that phone out? I'm just saying. This is hard work. This is relational and contextual work. You are dealing with a generation who was raised by electronics. You are dealing with generations of people who were raised to have an opinion. When we got to second grade, they changed the math curriculum. It wasn't about whether or not you got the answer right or wrong. It was most important how you got to the answer. But you want me to come to your church and sit there and shut up and be invisible. But you raised me to have an opinion. And you raised me to use my brain. You raised me with impeccable critical thinking skills that I'm just supposed to check in the door. Right? And let me tell you, historically African American churches, we have another problem on top of this. I'm going to pick for a minute. We don't know the difference between respect and opinion. If I disagree with you, I'm being disrespectful. No, I'm having a difference of opinion. There are two different things there. Okay? Just because I don't get locked in step with what you want me to do because this is the way we've always done it. By the way, when churches tell me that, I know they're dead way before they do. That's the death march tone. Right? Doesn't mean that I'm disrespectful. I can respect you and I can have a difference of opinion. I'm not supposed to speak up because it's not my turn. But then you want to know why I'm not there. Okay? I told you this is hard stuff. This is, the truth of the matter is that there is no secret bullet. There's no magic potion. There's no one thing that's going to make young people fall into your church. It doesn't work that way. And even lumping all young people into one group is devastating. Are you the same as her? Are you the same as him? Are you the same? Then why do we want all young people to be the same? Painting with broad strokes is not helpful. It makes the church look deaf to society. Do the relational and the contextual work. All right, so I have a question for you. In which ways is your congregation engaging in ministry with young people? Is it window dressing? Or is it meaningful engagement? Here's window dressing. We're going to let the youth have a Super Bowl party. We're going to allow the PTA to meet here. But they better not mess with the coffee in the kitchen.
We lock it up. We lock it up.
You lock it up, right? We want the young people to be here, but don't bring your Starbucks in my sanctuary. We want, yeah, let's talk about that. We want young people to participate in worship, but you're not allowed to tinker with the format of worship at all. I told you, you're not going to like me very much when this is over. And you know why? It's because we've confused with what is sacred and what is relevant. We have sacred cows in our congregations, in our ways of leadership, in our DNA that is not at all sacred. It's tradition. It's not sacred. God is sacred and holy. The presence of God is sacred and holy. Your stuff is not sacred. And it is not holy. It's a means to an end. Oh. What does she mean by that? Now, I told you I'm a preacher's kid twice. All I know is church. That's all I know. I mean, literally all I know. I try to do something different. I ran from God. I got a political science degree in race relations from Spelman College in Atlanta. I was applying to law school, and God showed up and said, you know that's not what I called you to do. I was like, what is going on? Even though I knew what was going on because I'd seen my parents work with people who were called to ministry, and I'd seen people struggle, and I knew what it looked like to disobey God. So when God shows up and says, you can do this the easy way or you can do this the hard way, I'm like, I'll take door number one. Thank you very much. The way my daddy tells the story is that I got lost on the way to the law school at Emory and ended up at the theology school. So I have a deep and abiding love and respect for the things of God and for the church. The church has been so good to me and to our family. I've been to school because of the United Methodist Church, and education that I could have never imagined in my life because of the generosity of United Methodists like you who sit on pews and pay apportionments. Your shared giving. Because you sacrifice to scrape those dollars and cents together for the shared mission-focused initiatives and the Black College Fund and Student Offering Day and all of these things. And I've had so many experiences because of GBOD and higher ed and religion and race and global ministries. So many experiences in life that I would never have had because of the people of the United Methodist Church. And for that, I am grateful. I am not here to tear your church apart. I am here to blow it up. Because the same old is not working. What is the definition of insanity? Do the same thing over and over again, you get what? So the first thing is we have to pull up a mirror. You know, one of those mirrors, women, you know, when you go to the hotel or even at your house, those mirrors that you avoid because they show you every little, it's one of those mirrors. We need a magnifying mirror with a light on it. God bless you. I stay away from those. And we need to hold it up to our churches and in our leadership meetings and in our worship and in everything that we do in our mission activity and everything that we do and say, is this window dressing so we can feel good? Or is this meaningful engagement to the young people of our communities? Ask the hard questions. Do the hard work. Be brutally honest. Blow it up. Otherwise, you're going to get the same old thing. So you got to prepare your congregation. Before they implode buildings, what do? Anybody know? They gut them. They gut them. They take everything out, right? And then what do? They wrap it. What else? Evacuate the area. Right? We got to do some of that in our churches. All right? This is what it looks like to prepare your congregation. First, you got to learn who you're dealing with. Beloit College in Wisconsin puts out a mindset list every year. This is a phenomenal document. I'm going to show you 2018, but the class of 2019's list is out now. And every year, they give us a list of where the mind of incoming freshman college students is. You know anything about incoming college freshmen? You sure? For the class of 2018, during their initial weeks of kindergarten, they were upset by endlessly repeated images of planes blasting into the World Trade Center. That means they've never known a world without TSA, Homeland Security, and the threat of terror. Never. They never lived in that world. My little sister doesn't know anything about going to the gate and being able to watch your family member get on a plane and watch it fly away. She doesn't know anything about that. They binge watch their favorite TV shows. And they binge watch video portions of their college courses as well. What do you think that means for you? Just think about it. The Daily Show with Jon Stewart has always been the only news program that gets it right. That means they don't trust ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, Fox News, MSNBC. None of those people that you're listening to, they don't want anything to do with that. And there has never been affirmative action in California. They don't have your hang-ups. They don't have your hiccups. They live in a different world. Students heading into their first year of college for the class of 2018 were born in 1996, generally. And these people have never been alive in their lifetime. Tupac. I'm telling you, that's important to this Gen Xer. Tupac has never been alive for their generation. For those of you who need a history lesson, Tupac was a legendary rap artist and hip-hop artist who was the voice of a generation, the voice of social justice for a generation, and was murdered. And a lot of people, sort of like Elvis, they think he's still walking around somewhere. John Benet Ramsey was already kidnapped and dead when these children were born. So their parents are like this. These kids don't play at the park down the street unsupervised. They don't play in their front yards unsupervised. Carl Sagan and Tiny Tim didn't exist in their lifetime either. So this is where that authenticity thing that we talked about this morning gets real important. Because these kids have had a front row seat to mistakes. Okay? We have a tendency in the church to try to be perfect, right? We whitewash or, whatever, to try to make everything look like it's okay. It used to be in church. I remember when I was a little girl, my dad was the pastor at Central Church in Atlanta, right on the AUC campus, and it was growing, crazy, like leaps and bounds, and they were having all kinds of growing pains and issues. But I remember that Dad really wanted to sort of maintain a balance for all of the generations in the church. There was something for all of the generations of the church, right? And for the folks who had grown up, with the wood floor kind of churches, where you could hear the feet, those kind of folks, they had grown up in country churches, and the country had come to town, and they made it. There was Wednesday night prayer meeting. And my little brother and I would sit on the back pew and roll our eyes. Take a nap. Do some homework. And perk up and listen when it got real interesting. Because every now and then somebody would tell the truth. Every now and then, Miss Odessa, her favorite hymn is Great is Thy Faithfulness. She died when she was 98 years old, and my dad took me to the mortuary to view her for the very first time before they embalmed her, because he wanted to teach me what it was like to live with death. And he said, this is what you do. He said, she lived a great life. Let's release her to the God that made her. He taught me how to pray. And he reminded me when I was sitting on that back pew just a few years earlier when her leg was amputated. She came to church for the first time. I was distraught. And he reminded me, he said, you remember how she raised up out of that wheelchair? He said, I saw you. I saw you sit up straight on the back row. He said, you remember what she said? I said, yes, sir. He said, tell me what she said. I said, Daddy? She said, first giving honor to God, who is the head of my life, who is the strength and the reason for me being here today. The God who made me, the God who gave me legs to walk on, the God who released this leg from me so that I might have life. I have to praise God. She said, no, honey, looking at one of the young moms across the room. She said, no, honey, it hadn't been easy. She said, it hurts bad. She said, sometimes I wake up and I forget that there's nothing there. She said, I've fallen more times than I would like to admit because I forgot that it wasn't there. She said, there have been so many sleepless nights. So many times I've cried out to God, why? Why me? And so many times I've heard God cry out in the middle of the night. But you're here, and I'm with you. You know what that taught me? Do you know what her taking down her mask and telling the truth taught me? When my 33-year-old best friend died last year, I could get up at that funeral and sing Great is Thy Faithfulness like I would today, and I'm in a good mood today. It taught me about the very nature of God, and that in the midst of whatever was going on in my life, that I needed a community of people who know the mighty power of the Almighty God and who would be truthful with me about what this thing called life is like, and that when it got hard, see, y'all went and let me start preaching. Authenticity is the key. If you're having a bad day, say so. If you're in a bad mood, say so. If you're struggling, say so. If you are scared of those kids at that middle school, say so. Authenticity is key. All right, we got to talk about engaging in ministry. If you're following along in the book, the commandments intro 1, 2, and 3, we've hit those. We've hit those already. So we're going to move to commandments 3 through 5, engaging in ministry with young adults. I got to say, this is heart work for me. I said that there are three of us, 33, 30, and 18, and we all have completely different personalities. Pray for our parents. We are all very strong-willed. We are all very opinionated. And we are all our own people. Very independent and very stubborn. The younger two are a lot more outgoing than I am. I'm an extrovert, and I told God for most of my life the last thing I would do was be a preacher. When I leave here today, hopefully I'm going to get to spend some time with my cousins, but I'm going to have to sleep for about 4 hours before I can do anything because this kind of thing just, whoo. And we all communicate in very different ways. I'm the kind that has to think about what I say. I am slow to respond. I am considerate of how I use my words. And I'm one of those slow bubbles. Like you can punch me and punch me and punch me and punch me and punch me, and I'll take it until I'm not going to take it anymore. And when we get to that place, there's no turning back. God help you. My brother, he's a hothead. He's going to say whatever he wants. He don't care how it comes out. He's a straight shooter, and it is the way he says it is, no matter what. Okay? When you look up preacher's kid in the dictionary, Jason's picture is there. He's like the quintessential preacher's kid, right? And my little sister, she's somewhere in the middle of us. She's extremely outgoing. She's brilliant. So is my brother. He's like a genius, and I get jealous about how they can work things out. You know, I have to work really hard. They're like, oh yeah, I got it. You know, and she's the boss. Because she was raised by different kind of parents than my brother and I were raised by. See, there were some things I just wasn't going to say to my daddy. I'm grown. I have a mortgage. I pay my own bills. And there's some things I'm still not going to say to my daddy. She doesn't care. She does not care. She's just going to, you come at her, she's coming right back. Have you heard that phrase, don't come for me unless I call for you? That means don't come at me unless you don't want it back. Right? She's that kind. But that means we need to be engaged in very different ways. Right? If you start yelling at me, we're done. I will shut down. You can yell all you want, but you won't be yelling at me. You can yell at yourself. If you yell at my brother, he will yell back, and you will wish that you had never yelled at him in the first place. And if you yell at my little sister, she'll sit there and she'll take it, and then she'll dish it right back out. We're in 3 different generations. We function in 3 totally different ways. But churches want to put us in one pot and treat us all the same. So if you want to engage in ministry with young people, you got to be able to hear new insights. So I used this quote this morning. I love Howard Thurman. If you haven't read Jesus and the Disinherited, put it on the top of your list, okay? Howard Thurman, a theological genius. I think he stood in the face of God and wrote some of the things that he wrote because they are so real. If we're to engage in ministry with young adults, with newer generations, then we have to learn to listen. We are really good at talking. And we are really good at pretending to listen. And we are really good at hearing what we want to hear. And so if we're going to do this work and do it well, we've got to step back. Take our feelings out of it. And hear what's actually being said. And not what we want to hear. Post-civil rights generations they tend to be messengers of a new thing. You know, they tend to be people who come and are excited and are aggravated when you tell them that's not how we do it. Sometimes they're even the voice crying out in the wilderness. They irritate us because they're the voice of critique. And they remind us how we failed. Tomorrow's the first Sunday in Lent. Many of us will be saying these words, "Forgive us, for we have failed to be an obedient church." But then we're going to get up from the Lord's table and we're going to keep on being a disobedient church. And there are many millennials who want to challenge the church around that behavior. And we don't want to hear it. So we tell them, "Oh, you haven't been around here. You don't know how we do things. You haven't earned a seat on the church council. You don't pay enough money to be on the trustee board. But you don't know how hard we work to get that organ. You don't know the struggle that we went through to pay for that piano. You don't know what we sacrificed to build this church." And that's true. So why not enter into a mutual conversation about the past, the present, and God's future for us? We've got to create new entry points. A lot of preachers don't like this one because even when I was in seminary, which wasn't really long ago, we were taught that the magic behind making a disciple was a system called worship plus 2, okay? If you could get somebody in worship and connected in 2 other places, bam, you made a disciple, right? So if I can get you to come to worship, and then I could get you in a choir or a small group or a women's, United Methodist women's circle or something, then bam, I made a disciple. It was the magic sauce, right? The awesome sauce, right? That's what they taught us in seminary. That was evangelism 101. All you have to do is get them in the doors and help them get somewhere, and you're done. You see where that got us? So I want to turn this upside down. I want to say that the church requires new entry points. Let's think about this theologically, okay? Let's walk with me through this in a theological kind of way. What is worship? Somebody tell me, what's worship? Praising God. All right. If worship is about praising God, and the Pew Research Center has told us that some ridiculously high number of young adults have never had any encounter with God, why would they come to worship first? Why are they going to come and worship a God they have no reference point for, no understanding of, and their only experience with God is our bad behavior? Why in the world would we invite people off the streets into our dysfunctional worship services when they don't know anything about God in the first place? So that completely turns this Worship Plus 2 model inside out, right? It just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense theologically. It doesn't make sense logically. It doesn't make sense practically. Young people already have a problem with the hypocritical church. Stop inviting them to your worship services first, because then they get to see our hypocriticism in action. It's like popping the hood on a car to somebody who's trying to buy that car, and we show them that it's totally rusted out. Bishop Joseph Walker says, what keepers of the gates often don't realize is that the whole world is passing them by while they are preserving rituals and patterns that have no relevance. After all, you can't have an 8-track ministry in an iPod generation. But preacher, I don't know why they're not coming to my church. So what are we supposed to do? The post-civil rights generations could not graduate from high school or college without engaging in community service hours. Time Magazine, the Washington Post, the Pew Research Center says that even though the busters and the boomers think that this is one of the most selfish generations to ever live, they're actually one of the most generous generations that have ever lived. You think young people don't have any money. They just don't want to give it to you. They don't have any time. They just don't want to give it to you. They don't have any resources. They just don't want to give it to you. Because they've seen how we have maximized our resources. Still love me? I served the Atlanta First United Methodist Church as the senior associate before I joined the conference staff in North Georgia. I wish that video wasn't on. Atlanta First has an interesting history. If you know anything about Atlanta, there's a great big street that runs through the city of Atlanta called Peachtree Street. And Atlanta First is the delineator between downtown and midtown. It is the marker between downtown and midtown. It sits right at the financial district. Centennial Olympic Park is in its backyard. The IRS is next door. There are banks and law offices across the street. The Atlanta First United Methodist Church has in its history the unfortunate reputation of being one of the Peachtree Corridor, one of the only Peachtree Corridor churches that did not sign the Minister's Manifesto in the 60s to desegregate churches in Atlanta. Quite frankly, it was known in the city of Atlanta for being racist. It also happens to be a church that has money. The Coca-Cola Foundation gave a lot of money to the church. The Coca-Cola family were members of the church, and where Coca-Cola headquarters is where the original Wesley Chapel Church was before it became Atlanta First Methodist at 360 Peachtree. It sits at the busiest corner in the city of Atlanta. Over 40 years, it was in decline. People used to stand on Peachtree Street banging down the doors to get into that church. They'd swing wide the front doors and people would stand in the street to hear the preacher, hear the music and the worship together. And when I got there were about 50 people in worship who were just hanging on. They were some of the sweetest people I'd ever come across. And all I'd heard was how racist this church was. All the clergy told me I was crazy. This was my first full-time appointment. Why in the world would you go to a church like that? But I'm still crazy enough to believe that God is God and the church belongs to God. And that in such a strategic place like that, what kind of epic change could we impact in that city? See, the rest of the story is that church is 1 block from the hospital where I was born. It's 2 minutes from the churches where I grew up as a child. That's my community. These are my people. These are my friends. How dare I not go where I'm sent and try to figure this thing out? Not because I'm Jasmine, not because I have magic or have some secret potion, not because I think I'm good at this, but because I think that God put me on this planet for a reason. And maybe if I could humble myself in the sight of God and get on my knees and beg for some direction, maybe we could do something. 3 years later, we were up to about 450 in worship, several worship services, all generations in this church. And never once did the senior pastor nor I invite anybody to worship first. Hey, Matt. I'm Jasmine. How are you? Good. Hey, you like Habitat for Humanity? So I'm going to build this Habitat house on Saturday. You think you want to come with me? Sure. Oh, okay. So when Matt shows up, now, here's the deal. I already know Matt, right? I've learned context. I know he likes Habitat, right? I've spent some time building a relationship with Matt. And now I'm invited to join me on a journey that he already knows about because he's a millennial. He couldn't graduate from school without doing community service hours. It's familiar. And when Matt shows up for the Habitat build on Saturday, I'm there and I'm waiting for him and I'm excited that he's there and I'm partnering him with somebody who's not grumpy. Don't miss it. You almost missed it. You almost missed it. But I'm partnering him with somebody that I have trained, equipped to be in relationship with Matt. I got my house right first. You remember that? Get your house in order? Okay. And at the end of the day, because this person's going to be working with Matt all day, at the end of the day, this person is going to say, Matt, I just loved hanging out with you. A bunch of us get together on Friday nights, and there's jazz at this Starbucks on Cascade Road. Want to hang out with us? Sure. I don't have anything else to do. This city is crazy. And then Matt hangs out with us for a couple of weeks, and then we say, we come here on Thursday nights too, or if you can't make it, we broadcast our small group via a meeting, online meeting software, or on Facebook or whatever. Would you like to hang out with us for that? Well, I don't know. I don't know about this whole guy thing. Yeah, neither do we. But we ask questions, we have honest discussion, and nobody gets mad if you don't have the answer right or if you ask the wrong question. There's no wrong question. Hey, Matt, we love that you're a part of our small group. We all go to Sunday night worship at Atlanta First. We all sit together. We eat afterwards. They let you have cookies and stuff in the sanctuary. Want to come to worship? You see how that's different? Context, relationship, reverse the entry points. Start with something familiar. Build a relationship. Bring them along so that when they come to worship, it is not. Why am I here? I'm not walking in by myself. I'm not afraid to ask, what are they doing? Because, we have coded bulletins. We speak our own language. I'm just saying. I'm going to get off this. Woo-wee. I need to hurry up. We've got to empower new leaders. This is all about risk-taking, right? It's all about risk-taking. Risk-taking is about following God where others see no possibilities, but where God has shown possibility. It's easier to stay in our comfort zones and not put ourselves out there because we fear that something may go wrong. I have a friend, she's one of the youngest executives for the Marriott Corporation that's ever existed. When you get on a plane and you see all that Marriott stuff, she's responsible for that. She's a brilliant marketer. And she's just gotten a promotion to be the executive vice president for diversity initiatives or something. Her church split a few years back. And so she went church shopping. Because a church split is one of the most horrible things that can happen to a millennial in church. And she didn't want to go back to church, but she's got me as her BFF. So, she has I'm harping on her. She's like, well, you had to leave that church, so I can't watch you on Sunday mornings on TV anymore. So, can you, get up and go to church. So she went church shopping, and she finally found a church that she thought she might like. I imagine this church is kind of like Wesley, or like St. Peter's, or like Bend, or Driftwood. It's a church that says it's open. Dami went and met with the pastor, and she went to new members class, and she joined the church. And she opened the bulletin one Sunday, and it said that they were looking for some people to join the communications team. She makes billions of dollars for the Marriott Corporation. This is a no-brainer, right? She showed up to the communications meeting. The chair looked at her like, why are you here? Who are you? And why are you here? She introduced herself, and she said, why she was there, and that she was really interested in getting involved in her church, and she thought this was one of the ways that she could give back. They talked about old business for the first hour. Fussed about stuff they've been fussing about for every meeting for the last 3 years. When she asked a question, she was told to wait. And they got to the end of the meeting, and she raised her hand, and she said, so I've been waiting. Can I ask my question? Meeting adjourned. She hadn't been back to that church since. Empower new leaders. That means some of us have to sit down. And when we sit down, y'all wrong for that. Excuse me. When we sit down and we don't impede what happens next. Yet we offer ourselves as a partner to help them along the journey. That would be awesome. Does your leadership slate Reflect the people that you want to reach and serve. But we don't have young families. Is there a school in your neighborhood? Ask the PTA president to come and sit on your church council. But they don't know anything about our church. But they know everything about your community. Is there a college in your community? Go ask the students what they want to do instead of telling them what you're going to do. When you go into the schools, do you go in because of numbers? Or do you go in to make a difference in the lives of those students? The motives absolutely matter. See, I have a different view of the kingdom and the church, but I bet if you thought about it, you'd share it with me. What if the church wasn't bound within the walls of our building? What if the church was the school? What if the students that you work with are a part of your community because they're in that school? What if in East Austin, with the gentrification there, you begin to see all of the people that are moving in and moving out and being displaced and finding housing and being pushed out because of affordable housing and being pushed in because I can take it over? What if all of them were your church? What if we made decisions for the people who are not there? What if we sang songs we didn't like because they were familiar to somebody else? What if our liturgy actually became the work of the people instead of exclusionary because people don't understand it? I told you this was not safe for church. Unfortunately, in many of our worship services, we set up this us versus them. Not your church, right? But y'all, is killing us. Because it makes a certain group of people more important than somebody else. And a lot of times we do it unintentionally. One of the things that is very unintentional, very low-key in churches that drives millennials right out the back door is we'll call Mr. Edison, but Sister Margaret. You hear the real nuance there? Both Pastor Chase and I have the same degree, but he's pastor and I'm sister. Right? We weight people's voices based on their pocketbooks and their tenure. Well, Miss Betty's been here, so we know her track record. We're going with her. You asked, I'm just trying to tell you. I'm not making this stuff up. I'm telling you what I've learned. Even when we get up on Sunday morning to make announcements, we get up and say stuff like, we're going to have the UMW potluck at Miss Johnson's house, bring what you brought last year. Well, who the heck is Miss Johnson? And I wasn't here last year. What the heck is UMW? And that's how we start or interrupt worship. We take more time to tell all the stories of all the stuff we have going on at church instead of in prayer about how we need God to move through our lives. Don't waste my time kneeling at an altar rail, but don't leave out my announcement. Not tradition for the sake of tradition, but only tradition that leads to transformation. If it's just what we've always been doing, and that's why we keep doing it, stop. If you can't get to the why behind it, quit. But if it's about transformation of real people's lives, honey, you better run and run and run and run and see what the end's going to be. We don't have dead churches because the church is an organism of God, and God is alive and well and a living thing. We have dead church folk who are choking the dear life out of us. And everybody wants to blame it on the system. But you know those non-denominational churches and those Baptist churches that you think are taking all your people? They're using your system. Do you remember who you are as Wesleyans? Do you remember how you started? You started as small groups and class groups and accountability groups, in groups that help people grow and learn. And you didn't do it at the church on 7 o'clock on Wednesday night. You did it in the homes, in the communities, in the real places where people were. And these non-denominational churches and these Baptist churches have stolen your stuff, and you gave it to them on a silver platter. Sunday school is dead. It's not a value anymore. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but it is not a value anymore. You know why? Because we stopped telling the truth. We let people decide what the curriculum was going to be, and it's stuff that makes them feel good. Nobody's getting up early in the morning for that on a day they don't have to go to work. Teach me something that transforms my life and make it work in my crazy life. Do it electronically. Do it in my community. We have all of these churches that are commuter churches. We never shifted from our model of ministry when we were a community church. We're still doing it like everybody walks to church. And yet everybody's driving hours and miles every day to get to church, to get to work, to get to wherever they need. And we're still doing ministry as if people can just drop in. Sunday school is dead, but small groups are not. Now, there are some Christian educators that are going to have my head for that. And that's okay. Ooh, I got to go fast. Okay. Small groups that are creative, flexible, life-giving, authentic, accountable, and freeing. Young people don't want silent churches. We have so many public institutions that are silent. Nobody's speaking the truth in love from an unbiased standpoint. Why have you abdicated your role as public theologians? Why have you abdicated your role to stand in the public square and tell the truth about the gospel of Jesus Christ and how it transforms the lives of many? Knock those walls down, swing wide those doors. Prepare the people. Then implode the thing and do something different. Maybe they won't knock down your doors, but they also won't think that you're invisible. Maybe it would matter if your church closed its doors tomorrow. Maybe people would protest in the streets because there's nowhere to get food. Because you feed the people. At 360 Peachtree Street, we became the church where people said in Atlanta, if you need something, go knock on those big red doors. They'll figure it out for you and with you. They will be Christ in the flesh for you. To tell you the truth, there is no secret sauce. But it also isn't rocket science. I said that once and there was a rocket scientist in the room and I was like, but really what it is a return to the basics. It's a stripping down of our stuff. So that God can build what God intended in the first place. So we're back to the question from this morning. What are you willing to sacrifice? How important is your membership? How important is your discipleship? There are entire generations of people who need you to choose Jesus. And I can't lie, it's absolutely risky. You may get a call from the district superintendent. The lay people might want to flog you in the square. But so what? When I get to meet Jesus face to face, I want to be able to say, I did the very best. The very best. With what you gave me. And what we had together. The Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, we pray. Amen. Thank you so much for being here. Thanks for putting up with me and my nonsense. I'd love to get to meet some of you. There are books out there if you'd like to pick them up. They're also on Amazon and a bunch of other places. But hey, I dare you. I just dare you. Go home and turn it upside down. Amen? Thank you.